And welcome back to Top Story. Now, we are so thrilled to have Terry Sheenan in our studios because he's so busy. And I have to say, he wants to explain why he looks so casual, because I said, I can't remember the last time I saw you with no tie on. But you've been busy still this morning.
Yes, I was actually just down at the Christmas cheer depot, and we were loading up the food and the toys for the needy families in Sault Ste. Marie, and I saw some of your friends from Sault Online down there promoting it too, so that was good to see them there. But it was amazing to see the community there, all sorts of people. The Canadian Armed Forces were down there. I was proud to be lined up with them, loading up the trucks, and it's really amazing how caring a community we have. So yes, that's why I'm dressed like I was loading a truck. So
because you were.
Yep.
I think it's really to be involved in stuff like that. Some people are reticent to do it because they think it's a little depressing, but it's not at all, because everybody's on the same page and everybody's enthusiastic and really want to help.
Oh, absolutely. It's really, really great, and it sort of ties into some of the stuff that I've been doing in Ottawa. And I just introduced a private members bill and precarious work, and you know, it's amazing when you see and you take a look at our country and many other countries. There are people that are working, but working in precarious work, which means that it's work that usually doesn't have benefits, doesn't have holidays, sick days.
Any kind of security.
Any kind of security. You know, it's contract to contract to contract to contract to contract. And it's challenging. So there's some health issues usually associated with it, long hours, and then it's sort of spirals, and it's in a lot of areas in healthcare and education. You'll see it. So what I'm looking for the government to do is define it, have a national definition, and then take a look at the symptoms, the issues, and then roll out, you know, some ways to mitigate, you know, precarious work and make things better. Because all studies show that people working precariously tend to have health issues, stress issues, and so I've been talking with people even here in Sault Ste. Marie, and there's an issue there. So that just reminded me of this when we were talking about Christmas cheer, because some of the people that are receiving Christmas cheer are working precariously. So I mean, it's one of those things that sort of tied in with some of the work I'm doing on the Hill.
Precarious jobs, you know, it's interesting because you mentioned that it can be anybody.
Yep.
You know, maybe 20 years ago, a precarious job might have been working part-time at 2 different jobs.
Yep.
Now, there are teachers who've gone through university, through college, are teaching, and have to teach for 10 years before they can get a full-time job.
Very true. 3 out of 10 people working in education are working precariously. And that's a lot of people. So you go and you spend a lot of money on your education.
Right.
And then you take a little more education, and then you try and teach, even at the post-secondary institutions, and you're working precariously, and it's challenging. And then the stats show that people that are working precariously tend to postpone, you know, things like getting married and having kids, because there's no security. Buying a home is another issue.
Yeah.
Lots of debt, and after school, and you're working precariously. So those are issues, and you know, it used to kind of happen one-off once in a while, but sometimes it seems to be systematic in systems, which isn't necessarily good. You know, those that want to work in contract situations, in short-term contracts, that's a choice of theirs.
Right.
And sometimes it could be related to, you know, where they are in the situation of their life, compensation maybe. That's different. And so those are things that, you know, we need to take a look at and say, yeah, okay. But it's those people that don't want to be working precariously, but are working right beside the same individual that is enjoying a better salary, benefits, sick leave, and all the benefits. They could be on the cubicle next door to each other.
Yes.
Why is that fair?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So where do you think the problem stems from? Is because a lot of people think it's employers, it's so much cheaper now, because if you hire somebody part-time or on a contract basis, then you don't have to give them benefits, you don't have to, you know, worry so much about overtime. If they want to leave, somebody's right there to take over. You know, is that where it stems from? Does an education have to happen there?
I think so. And that's part of the reasons why we have to send this to the HUMA committee to study it, to do the work on it, and take a look at what are the reasons and the symptoms. And Obviously, research has indicated that is one of the reasons, that perhaps it happened because of a need within a certain industry, but then it became a practice. It became a practice to save money, right? Whether it's implicit or explicit, the managers started doing that and started doing it. But that's not good for the business, whatever the business is, because people are foregoing training, education. We know that we're going to have a whole bunch of people retiring, and a lot of people who are working in precarious work aren't necessarily getting the same work training, and they're not going to be loyal to that company either. So some of the companies could be shooting themselves in the foot unintentionally, and so and not all companies do it, and so we want to have that sort of discussion, and it's going to be a very interesting undertaking. It's the first of its kind in Canada. And
that's awesome you're looking at that.
Yeah.
And you know what, the days of, like, my parents, for instance, my father retired from the first job he ever had at the pulp and paper mill in Espanola. Those days are gone for our kids and our grandkids.
Sure. It's very true, and it's affecting youth, and you know, people that have post-secondary educations, 30% of them are working precariously. And of that 30%, 60% are women. Not because women choose to, but because the labor market tilts against them.
Right.
That's not fair. So one of the things that the studies also have indicated, not only because of the issues of health and compensation, but also there's a social disengagement from people working in precarious work. Well, they don't participate as much in elections. They don't
Really?
vote. Yeah, because they're disengaged from it.
Oh, they don't feel like they're part of the system, that they don't matter, so they don't. Oh.
And so people start saying, wow. And then so not only just elections, but also volunteerism and community involvement. That some of the young people, well, they just don't have time sometimes. I mean, you're working whenever called upon for very, very long hours, you know, and you don't have the ability to take sick days when you're sick. You're kind of running yourself ragged, and then to go out and volunteer and to get involved in the community is very challenging for somebody. So those are some of the other issues that precarious work brings to a society. So that's stuff that we want to take a look at and address.
Now, something else we want to take a look at and address, I'm sure you're not going to be surprised by this at all. We here at ONNtv call it CUSMA, the former NAFTA. Very clear that it is very separate from the aluminum and steel tariffs. It's interesting to me that it wasn't made that clear while the negotiations were going on.
So what happened was, under the NAFTA agreement, the former NAFTA agreement, Trump used a little used presidential power, and it's called 232, where he can issue tariffs against products and countries because he feels that they're a national security threat. And like I've always said, it's ridiculous. We have the longest undefended border in the world.
It's hard not to find that funny, that he would assume that Canada is a national threat to the United States.
I call it ludicrous, and it is ludicrous, because when I go, and you know, we all have friends, relatives in the United States.
Sure,
We travel back and forth freely, and you know, we don't see the tanks on the border or barbed wire. What we see is a bunch of friendly folks, and so we've had that relationship for a long time, and our supply chains are so integrated that this 232 tariff is damaging Americans significantly. And there was a nail company that shut down recently in the United States because of Trump's tariffs. And what these tariffs do, it becomes a tax on Americans. And we explain this when we're down doing our lobbying with our American coterminous politicians and the senators in the House of Representatives, is that the fridge that uses steel made in Canada has gone up in price because the price of steel has skyrocketed. And the cars are going to go up in price. And I liken it to the softwood lumber tariffs that are in place. Americans are still building, so they're buying Canadian softwood with the tariff on it. So the average American home for a middle-class American has went up by $10,000. So it's going to be a burden on their economy. Our economies in Canada and the United States are hot. Canada's economy, the unemployment rate is at a 40-year low, but it could be better. Americans' economy is hot, but it could be much better. These tariffs are a hindrance for even better economic outcomes. So we continue, and that's my New Year's resolution, is
I was
to
going to say,
redouble our
as we
effort.
close out 2018, that's probably on your agenda.
It is. We have a newly elected House of Representatives and a Senate, so we'll be down there talking to newly elected Democrats and Republicans, and re-elected Democrats and Republicans, because we have allies on both sides
Sure.
that see this as being ludicrous. And I think that this past election was, American election was a great distraction. I've met with Republican people that were in the Steel Caucus, and they said to me, yeah, Terry, I'm not going to do anything until after the election. You know, I'm focused on the election. I got, you know, like that. And I said, but we need to. So we need to remind them that, hey, about our conversation we had. So we need them to keep pressure on the president. NAFTA has to go through a process of approval by the Americans. And the last NAFTA deal took like 4 years to do
Right.
that. And so we're going to be down there. We have our American unions working with our Canadian unions and us, putting pressure on the president. And we also have businesses like the American Chamber of Commerce. I met with their vice president, and they are totally against these tariffs too. And this is a world tariff too. It's just not Canada that seemed to have, and just not Mexico. The entire world is being affected on it, and it's affecting the world economy. So it's absolutely ludicrous.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always going to be jobs and work for you to do, Terry.
Yep.
And we're very thankful here in Sault Ste.
Thank you.
Marie that you're taking such good care of us.
Well, thank you very much, and I wish everyone the best of the season. Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. Wish everyone health and prosperity.
Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Merry Christmas, Terry. Thanks
Thank
so
you.
much. We'll take this break. We'll be right back.